if you had to start your fountain pen collection from scratch, what pen would be your first purchase? So I interpreted this question to be like, knowing what I know now, if I had to start over, what would I do? You know, I could hypothetically take this as if I was a new person getting into fountain pens, but I'm going to just go with, you know, if I you know, didn't have any of the pens I had, but I had all the pen knowledge and experience that I do, which pens would I go for first? You know, so for me, I think back to where I was 10 years ago. You know, there were a lot of the same pens that were around now. There's a lot of other new ones that were there. So some of the first ones that I went to 10 years ago are still solid pens, still offered, and I would still recommend them to people new getting into fountain pens. So things that I got when I first started out, I had a Lamy Vista, or the Safari Vista, as it was still kind of called back in those days. You know, it's the exact same pen as a Safari. It's just transparent, so they called it the Vista. Not sure if you knew that. I had to learn that off the bat. I was like, oh, the Vista, oh, the Safari, they look really similar. And then eventually I learned like, oh, it is the exact same pen. Anyway, so great pen. You can swap the nibs and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, a lot of people recommended Lamy at that time, still do. Great brand. So that one. And the Vista I just liked. It was clear and I could use whatever ink I want. The whole concept of using a demonstrator pen was kind of new and unique. So yeah, definitely I would be into that. The Kaweco Classic Sport is one that I had. This is actually the original one that I got. There was one, you know, the first batch of commercially made pens that I ever got. I placed one order and I got like 5 or 6 pens. And these two were both ones that I got in that very first. So these are 10-year-old pens. Maybe even more than 10 years now at this point, because I think that was in like July or August or something like that of 2009. So going on 10 years with these same pens. The reason I liked the Kaweco Sport is because I read that people eyedropper converted them, and I was very curious about that process. So I got it so that I could do that. So that was kind of fun back when that was kind of even a more obscure of a thing than it is today. The Platinum Preppy, still a great pen, still would highly recommend. A lot of people eyedropper converted this one too for that increased ink capacity. So definitely, I would still consider that one too these days. Pilot Varsity, I actually didn't get this one on my radar early days, but it's a great pen, especially if you're just getting used to fountain pens. You don't want to have to clean it. Highly recommend. Great writing pen too, performs really well, and is not that expensive. Another pen that I bought kind of right off the bat, this is a Pelikan Pelikano. And this is the old design because it's one of the originals that I had. It was kind of in that same range of like a Lamy Safari or something like that, or the Kaweco. It was kind of in that $20 to $25 range. Takes a standard international converter and has a couple different nib size options. It was known as just kind of a reliable writer, so it's kind of like Pelikan's answer to the Safari's call, to Lamy's call there. Never really took off for us. We don't offer it anymore because it's not something that a lot of people ask us about. We've tried carrying it off and on, and it just hasn't really been super popular for us. And then another one that I really loved when I first got into it was the Pelikan Script. Again, we carried it for a while, off and on. Hasn't been super popular, but it's a great pen with an italic nib, stub nib. And it's actually got a little bit of bounce, so it's stainless steel nib. It's not super expensive, $15, $20, somewhere around that range, maybe 25, I can't remember. Standard international converter. It is a kind of a script like calligraphy pen, so it's, you know, it doesn't really post. You know, it's kind of long, so it's more of a little more of a desk pen. It's not exactly something you kind of carry in your pocket so much. But it was my first introduction into a stub pen. And I really fell in love with it. In fact, I ended up buying like 5 or 6 of these things, inking up in all different colors. So, you know, when I first got into the whole fountain pen thing, my intention from the very beginning was to get as broad of a diversity of experience as possible, because I was reading all these different things about things that people were getting into, and I was like, I want to try that, I want to experience this, I want to do that. And what I've come to learn over time about myself, reflecting now, thinking a little bit about who I am as a person, that is just my nature. So I'm not one who goes like super, super, super deep in one area and learns absolutely everything there is about it. You know, obviously fountain pens is a somewhat specific niche. So, you know, you could argue that maybe I'm not as self-aware as I think I am. But no, like I'll get into fountain pens, but I'm not like getting super deep into one specific brand and I learn the entire history of that one brand and I become the subject matter expert on that just one brand. I like to have a broad range of experiences with different types of products and different things like that. And then I make connections and comparisons across them all over the place. So I like learn very broadly. I'll go pretty deep on some of it, but then I make connections and comparisons across a wide range of things. That's exactly what I've done in the fountain pen world. It's exactly what I've done in like woodworking, for example. Like that is a passion of mine. I don't get super deep into one skill as a woodworker. Like I could make dovetails, like hand cutting dovetails. You can go super deep on that. But I don't do that. I'll try it. I'll try this and and I'll try, you know, all these different techniques and buy different tools. I like to have a very diverse range of experiences. This is kind of my MO. Same thing like now I'm getting into puzzles. You know, I'll do like, you know, regular 3x3 Rubik's Cubes. They have competitions where you can practice like one type of cube and learn literally hundreds of different algorithms to get faster and faster and faster at doing them. I'm like, I don't really care if I can solve it in a minute or 30 seconds. Okay, is it really worth hours and hours and hours of practice for me to get there? Or I want to get different types of puzzles and have to completely figure out all new puzzles. Like that's more my MO. So now I have like 50 different puzzles and they're all different kinds of weird shapes. And my wife's like, really, Brian? It just kind of happened. But that's kind of what I like to do. So I think, you know, knowing myself, my natural propensity, maybe you're wired that way, maybe you're not, and that's okay. I think that if I was to start over, I would do the exact same thing, and I would just go for a broad range of a lot of different things. I would get a mix-mash, mishmash, hodgepodge of different types of things, trying to get different pens of sizes and weights and nib types and brands and all these types of things, and I would largely do exactly what I've done. So because I like to have experience and have pens on hand and stuff like that. Now, granted, I've experienced all these before, so would I really need to acquire all these pens again because I had that? But, you know, knowing myself and my human nature, I would probably largely repeat myself and do the same kind of thing. Now, the thing that's different is that there's other new cool stuff that's come out since I got into it 10 years ago. So I think maybe some of the pens that I would have chosen from the get might have been a little bit different just because some of these, like especially like Pelikano and stuff like that, like nobody really talks about that anymore because it hasn't really been updated. It's not a really relevant pen so much for beginners as it maybe was 10 years ago. Now you have pens like Pilot Metropolitan has very much become a staple, or the MR as it's known outside of the US, has definitely become a staple in the kind of intro pen sphere, you know. So certainly I would have these. These didn't come out until 6 or 7 years ago, so these were not an option for me when I first started out. Jinhao, you know, Shark pen, of course, 51A, you know, things like that. The you know, X450, 750. Certainly I would have explored those as options. You know, Pelikan script, not sure if that would have been as much on my radar, but maybe the Pilot Plumix, you know, has some different nib sizes and stuff like that. So that might be more on my radar. The Diplomat Magnum, which funny enough, has been around that long, but was completely, the Magnum's been around for like 30 or 40 years, like a very long time. It's just wasn't really on anybody's radar until recently, and now it's like a phenomenal pen and very popular, especially starter pen. So this is pretty cool. So certainly would explore that. Let's see here. Yes, I would definitely explore a variety of nib types. You know, spare nibs on like a Lamy, you know, Safari, or you know, being able to get something like a Jinhao and maybe get spare nibs like a Goulet nib or some, you know, other things that have spare nibs, Edisons and Monteverdis and stuff like that. Certainly would be into that. The Pilot Parallel definitely is one that I would have explored, you know, especially as to get experience with stub nibs and italics and stuff like that. Try and get that experience. You know, if I was starting over, would I go super high end? Of course, I know I love a lot of really nice pens, Viscontis and you know, Namikis and things such as this. Yeah, I definitely would get into those pretty quickly, knowing what I know now. But I think, you know, if I was trying to rebuild my collection, I wouldn't necessarily go for all that high-end stuff because I'm not really a minimalist, as you could probably guess, especially in the pen sphere. So I would largely look to acquiesce. Acquiesce? Is that the right word? I don't know if I'm using that correctly. Acquire is what I'm trying to say. A multitude of different pens across a wide variety of brands. And the quickest way to do that is to start low end and then work your way back up. So if I had to start all over again, I would probably do it the exact same way because I like to have a lot of pens to experience and share them and talk about them with everybody and if I was starting over and did it low end, that's exactly what I would do. So there you go. If you're newer and just starting out, a lot of pens I mentioned here I think are really great. A lot of other ones that I know, but yeah.